people. Who's new in the back? Anybody there? So we got maybe a dozen folks that are brand new tonight. Okay, I'll introduce myself real quick. I'm Maggie Pittman. I work as the ranger at the Missoula district here on the Lolo for us. Let me introduce some of our key staff that are with us and tonight and every other meeting, and you have one of each of these folks at your tables and they'll be helping us facilitate. Over here, Don Stadler is our National Environmental Policy Act Coordinator at the district. I'll be at that table over there. Andy Kula. Andy is our resource assistant. He's in charge of weeds and wilderness recreation, you name it, he's got it. Over here, Chuck Sperry is the assistant team leader for the planning team. Chuck works out of the Bitterroot and Missoula offices and works also with the Flathead Forest. And he's been with us as kind of a subject matter expert. Sharon, of course, is our public affairs officer. She deals with the media a lot on the Lolo for us. Over here is John Waverick. John is our fire management officer on the district. Have I missed anybody? Okay, I think I got it. Two weeks ago, we made some agreements with you all that wanted to make sure you knew we have honored tonight. On your table, you have several things that you all asked for. And we apologize for if it appears to be cluttered. The first thing that folks wanted, there's a single sheet of paper that on one side has got a top half of the sheet has on it wild and scenic river designations. That will give you an idea of which rivers are currently designated as such or proposed as such. On the other side of that is the crosswalk, the comparison between the current forest plan and our preferred option. Okay, so that's a singular sheet on each of your tables. We also brought a definition. It's in written form on the table. It's the recreation opportunity spectrum definitions. Do you all see that? And I think there may be plenty for everybody to have one of those. Okay, let's see. A glossary. We had several of you all asked for a glossary of terms because we were throwing around a lot of terms that were new to folks. And there is again a singular sheet on each of your tables that is a glossary of terms. It actually may still be a little unclear once you look at those because a lot of it is in our language. Chuck, is there one on every table?
There's one. It might be under the map.
It's probably, yeah. Okay. Okay, so now if I can have everybody's attention for a few minutes and then we'll get into the rest of the presentation. I'm going to be sitting with an unruly table back there, aren't I? I can see that. I'm going to have to really get my, that's okay, just giving you a bad time. Meeting agreements. Last time, one of the things that I wanted to make sure that we all agreed on, and folks that are brand new, I invite you and encourage you to kind of get comfortable with the fact that in this meeting, we treat each other very well. We treat each other with respect. We honor each other's opinions. We all have differing opinions, and that's why we're here. But we expect each other to treat each other with respect and honor our opinions when we speak. So that's a precursor to next meeting on July 21st when we're going to have probably triple the amount of people at our meeting that we do tonight. So I ask you to exercise the opportunity to have an open mind this evening. We aren't here really to vote. We're here more to try to reach a consensus or collaborate together on what we think the allocations for our next forest plan ought to be. One thing we haven't done, and I always regretted not doing this the first meeting, what do you guys think about when you all either ask a question or you get up and report out for your table, you introduce yourself? Because there's a lot of familiar faces now that we've been kind of rolling through these meetings, and yet many of you may not know who each other are. So I got to thinking maybe I'd throw that out to the group that if you have the benefit and the floor for about 30 seconds, you introduce yourself. Everybody okay with that?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Thank you. If there's no questions about our process, then I'm gonna turn it over to Chuck. Chuck's gonna talk about the definition, the difference between what we mean by geographic area and desired condition. And then we'll go through the rest of the objectives.
Okay, everybody, can you read this from the back of the room? Don, can you see this from back there? Can you read it? I could if I was back there. So.
Can't see it all.
All right, well, I'll talk to you. We probably should have done this earlier, but we realized at the end of the last meeting, this question of whether we would allow you to change the wording of a management area or a suitability area description. It keeps coming up, especially with regards to the backcountry 2.2. A lot of people would prefer to see 2.2 non-motorized period, and currently it's primarily a backcountry experience, but there could be some motorized use. So I want to explain the rest of the picture. So that if you do feel strongly that you want 2.2, and those of you that are here for the first time, I think you'll catch on to the lingo at the table. For those of you that would want 2.2 to be non-motorized, if there are enough people in support of it, if you can come to terms and say, we're willing to say, yes, our preference is that be non-motorized, the way to do it is through something called a desired condition. So there are two major ways that you can influence the outcome of this process. One of them is to change the way the management areas are mapped, move the lines around, put them in different places, or change a designation where it currently says 1.2, change it to 2.2, or 5.1, change it to 4.1. Those are things you can do.
That's on the map, right, Joe?
On the map, yeah, on the map. And then the other thing is to declare a particular desired condition in a 4.1 or a 2.2. And some people might want that to be motorized, non-motorized, but that's the way you can do it. And I want to show you how these things fit together. The desired conditions are what the forest plan is going to say that we're trying to get to. That's the headliner of the forest plans. That's probably the driving feature of the plans. It's what district rangers of the future will be obligated to pay attention to when they propose a project or make a decision. They'll have to show that that decision is consistent with the forest plan, or they either have to do a different decision or amend the plan. The geographic areas, which you'll see map the large areas here, tonight we're going to be talking about the Rock Creek geographic area, are sub-areas that allow us to fine-tune this desired condition thing from that which would apply to the whole forest to particular locales. And then the management areas are simply descriptions of different ways we can manage a piece of land. We could manage it as wilderness, it's already designated, we call that 1.1. Or we could manage it for high-intensity timber production, that would be 5.1. The different management strategies we could use. And on the map, we say that the option that we've put out in front of you, we're saying that one way we could do it is to manage this area as 2.2 and this one is 4.1. Now we're asking you to talk to us. Do you want us to do that differently, change that arrangement, or do you like it the way it is? And is there some fine tuning you want to do? So the way that looks, you've got a geographic area, tonight's going to be Rock Creek, and your maps are going to show MA 2.2 here, and a little bit of 2.2 down there, and maybe some 5.1 here. You can move those lines around a little bit, or you can change this and say, no, that's really not 2.2, that should be 3.3, or it should be 1.2. Or you could say our desired condition in this particular 2.2 is such and such. So we've got several tools. It's not just changing that wording. So any question on that? Is that helpful? Uh-oh. I'm sorry I'm taking so much of your valuable time, Steve.
So what you just described, then, does that show up in writing at the end of all of what we're doing here?
Yes. And the short
That
answer.
possibilities.
I'd ask that a different way. I want to make sure I'm giving you a straight answer.
Does that show up in black and white somewhere after we go through this whole process and we find an area and we say, yeah, there's a 2.2 consensus is, it should be non-motorized?
What will happen is on the maps and in the notes, we'll carry that forward, and then so it will be on record in that form. And then in the end, if it turns out that a lot of other people felt that way too, then unless there's some awful good reason to do it differently, and as long as we're here, we're part of the process. So there's a good chance it would get carried forward and actually be part of the plan. There's a long way to go to get to that. Just a couple more questions. I don't want to delay you too long. This gentleman back here, I think I saw you first.
Are you saying our voices will be heard as individuals? Or are you saying we have to first get the table to agree with us before we have any say at all in this whole process?
I'm not going to address the second question right now. The purpose of these meetings
Why
is
not?
to get people to bring the voices together and see if you can work things out. Your individual comments, there'll be a 3-month comment period, and you can register those then. You can register them anytime, but that's the time we're going to be looking at them and bringing it all together. So, yes.
I was wondering if it would be possible for you to briefly summarize how you arrived for the preferred option what were the reasons why you know, for this particular area, why you mapped it the way you did?
Is this the first time that you've been here
No.
tonight? Okay. What do you think, Meg? Should I take a minute to do that?
Sure, yeah,
Okay,
that's
so
fine.
the way we got to this preferred option is, last year, we did a process like this. We brought people together, and we looked at maps, and people talked and so forth, and we took all of that information, plus information we got in the form of something approaching 3,000 public comments, plus information we got from our own employees, because they're the ones that are going to have to implement what we come up with. And we looked at all of that, and that's what's reflected here. And during a break, I can walk you through the steps in that process if
No,
you like.
I'm looking for the more specific, what the professional input from the Forest Service, you know, why, when you look at Rock Creek, you know, why one area is one and one, you know, what the different parts are, what your professional input was into that. I'm trying to get a picture for,
Yeah. Well,
you understand what I'm saying?
I think so. It's a little hard to answer. We can say some of it is information that sort of came to us. It's 1.1, which means it's already designated as wilderness. There's a lot of acres in that category. If it's 1.2, in almost every case, we carried forward for this starter option, or this option that you're looking at, the recommended wilderness from the last plan, just as a, you know, to get the conversation going. So that's a lot more acreage. In other places, we knew, maybe from past experience, that this area is very well suited for timber production. The road system is already in place. It's been heavily used for that activity, and there's already a lot of investment in regeneration and so forth. For professional judgment there would suggest maybe that's good to be 4.1 or 5.1. It's that kind of thing.
Okay, what I was saying is that if you outline that briefly for us, on each area as we're talking, then we would understand where you're coming from with the preferred option, and we'd be able to talk about it from there with a better understanding.
One thing you have tonight on each table, I believe, is a map that shows the management that would occur if we didn't do anything. If we just continued operating under the old forest plan, and you can do a side-by-side comparison. That might help a little bit there. And the other thing is we've got an expert from the district at each table, so you could ask John or Andy or what they know about it.
Chuck, you might also add that each of you will have the benefit of the geographic area description. And so, and we'll take about 10 minutes at each table for you all to read it. And so that gives a really good summary of where we are in terms of how we believe the Rock Creek area in particular tonight is now and should be managed. And then you'll get further into it and we'll talk about the desired condition.
Okay.
That'll give you a really good sense of where we are. Okay, anything else then?
I don't have anything else.
Outstanding. Okay, Chuck, let's see, I think that's it for me and Chuck. Sharon, you're gonna run through our process. Okay?
So, just a brief reminder, this is actually our 4th meeting. We're only having 8 total during the duration of the summer. So by this evening, we've laid ourselves a good foundation. We have a fairly good understanding of what the management areas mean. We're fairly comfortable with the maps. And tonight we're actually starting work on one of the geographic areas, one of the 3 geographic areas. As everyone has said, that'll be Rock Creek. So we'll start work tonight on the Rock Creek geographic area. And by the way, if you're looking for notes, I've mentioned this every meeting, but notes, or you want to read some of this stuff, you lost your copy, it is all available on the website for the plan revision team. And that's down here on the bottom. You can come and get that at some later date. Or I can read it to you. Some people are writing www.fsd.us/R1/WMPZ. That stands for Western Montana Planning Zone. So all these maps and all of our meeting notes, when you guys ask for specific things, we try to get them into the meeting notes so you can go there and get them within a few days. You don't have to wait till our next meeting.
Sharon, I'm sorry, one thing I forgot to mention, that we agreed last time that 7 to 9 just wasn't enough time for us to get through everything. So, I'm sorry, then you go ahead.
Go ahead.
No.
So anyway, so we talked about going 7 to 9:30, or maybe even 10 if it extends into 10. So right now, I'm planning 7 to 9:30. That's okay. I mean, if people have to get up late, they have to get up late, so that's okay, sir. So, planning 7 to 9:30, and if we go a little bit longer, it may be as late as 10, but let's hope not. So, in that case, what we will do is start work immediately on the geographic area for Rock Creek. At 9 o'clock, I am going to ask for report outs from each of the groups, and hopefully we'll get done by 10 o'clock that way. My suggestion to the individual tables is that you each take the geographic area description for Rock Creek. Let's spend, it's about 3.5 pages or so, let's spend 10 minutes reading that thing and digesting what's in it. And then the facilitator at each table, or the district or Forest Service employee, will keep notes there and try to, we'll just look for various areas of agreement where we can agree, even if we all agree that such and such a management area doesn't belong in Rock Creek, that is an area of agreement. If that's a good place to start, that's fine. So with that, I don't have no, there should be a file.
Okay, everybody's good. You know what the chart is? You guys good? Okay. A couple minutes for each of us to read these things. Okay. Hey, Bruce. Welcome. Good. Good. Is everybody, you know, what do you guys think about doing a quick intro? You do. You like that idea? Okay.
Everyone knows where people are coming from.
Yeah.
And who they are and what they represent.
Good. What's your name?
Ken Justice.
Ken Justice, and who are you with?
Well, I'm my person.
You're here as an individual.
I'm actually the vice president of a bank, but I'm here on behalf of my wife, Kelly Carmel, and what we've done with Grand Creek Ranch.
Yeah.
And conservation easements and horses. And
Great.
My motorcycle riding and racing and everything that I've
Good.
done since I was born here. So,
Perfect.
I mean, we're into weeds and management and
Good.
spend a lot of money taking care of where we live. But
Say your first name again.
Ken
Ken.
Justice.
Ken. Okay. All right.
Daphne Hurling, and I'm on the State Council of the Montana Wilderness Association, and also very active with Friends of Lolo Peaks, which we're not discussing tonight.
Yeah. Good.
I'm Bruce Farling, and I'm here for myself, but I'm also here for Trout Unlimited.
Great.
Michael Gibson, same, Trout Unlimited, myself. Howard Toole is my main interest.
Lolo Peaks. Good. Good.
Steve Trombell, I'm here for myself. I'm also involved in Friends of Lolo Peak.
Good. Good.
French one, I'm just an interested person. Just want to comment on the various maps and the changes.
Great. All right. Thanks.
Eileen Schwaneman, very interested in our public lands and what's done with them. I'm also involved in Friends of Lolo.
Good. Okay. Good. Thanks, guys. That's helpful. So, you know, here's how we're going to work this. Each table has a form that all the Forest Service folks are going to complete for our discussions tonight. And this is kind of what we thought we'd try for each of the geographic areas so we can capture the points of agreement by each table. And this helps us because last time we had a little bit of a misunderstanding as to what it meant to report out through a table. So we'd have somebody say, you know, I'm the most boisterous, I'm going to stand up and I'll report out, and it may not have reflected what the consensus in that table was. So we thought this might be a good way to track it. So I can write stuff on the flip chart if we have some points we want to discuss and get them up there. And when we get to a place of agreement, I'll capture it here. If we don't have any, that's fine. And then if we have some places that we're close to agreement, if we just had a little bit more adjustment, we'd be there. We'll capture that as well. And we'll do that for each of the management areas. And so if everybody's okay with that, we could get right into that and start talking first about recommended wilderness in the Rock Creek drainage. And that would be management areas 1.2. And just so that you all know, we talked last time about some percentages. People were interested in percentages. For this particular geographic area, it's 44.5% recommended wilderness in the Rock Creek drainage. So the
And
kind
this,
of,
and this is the 44 point, whatever
it
percent,
is.
correct?
The darker green on the map is currently wilderness, that's a Welcome
Right.
Creek Wilderness area, and the other two are currently roadless areas, inventory roadless. And so we're recommending those for wilderness under the new.
About 5 or 6 years ago, Fish, Wildlife and Parks they did a comprehensive study of bull trout populations. And one thing they discovered that the whole rock drainage is extremely critical for bull trout. And they said virtually all the little tributaries were used for spawning. Actually, Bruce might be able to pin down the exact date that was
Right,
published.
right, yeah.
I strongly believe that all the recommended wilderness area should remain. Back when I was to see upgrades of some of the other areas.
In Rock Creek.
Yeah.
So in your mind, we aren't recommending enough wilderness.
Well, not necessarily wilderness, but maybe a few more backcountry areas.
Okay?
I don't want to, I just want to say I don't want anyone to downgrade or take away any of the recommended wilderness.
Okay, all right, so you're in agreement then, as I can count what you're saying is that you agree with what we've got here for 1.2 recommended wilderness. All right,
I would,
so far,
I would go with Steve.
okay? All right. Michael, anything
Yeah,
from you?
no, I would concur with that.
Ken, you have any thoughts at all?
I'm gonna be the total opponent to probably all of this.
Okay.
Again, because I was born here and have had so much fun. My wife has horses, the family has had horses, and I'm definitely allergic to them. So the only way I get into the backcountry is on a motorcycle. And I was just turned off at Brewster Creek, went up clear over the top, and came out clear over at Peaburg. Got gas from a farmer that I've known for years over there, and came back on the road. So for me,
Which road?
I came back on the highway. I have a 6-speed KTM, so for me to see all of that go completely roadless would affect me and future generations of my kids if they're allergic to animals and they don't want to go after work. You can't go all the way from where I went and come out on the other end and walk home. You can do it on a motorcycle. So to me, I don't want to see it all roadless. I would like to see a way of people like myself that are responsible to help police it, so that the people that would never show up here, but that will go start fires, drink beer, tear up, chase animals, whatever, that we could come up with a plan, or some kind of a way that we could help police it, so that I'm not pushed out of an area that I've been able to have fun in all my life, and so does my folks. So,
Are you talking about sort of designated trails?
yeah, which that's what we're using right now. I mean, the Forest Service has trails up there now that it says 4.5 miles out to this trailhead and so many miles out to this one. And I mean, personally, I as far as the fisheries and stuff, I absolutely don't ride along waterways. I mean, that's ridiculous. So cows erode it way more than we ever would. Look at our ranch.
Brewster Creek Road stayed open, right?
Brewster Creek Road is it one of those there with the
The
yellow?
one between this back
Yes.
and that. So you guys weren't planning on doing it as part of this. I mean, that's going to stay
Yep,
open.
that one is still
Everything else.
Yeah.
And
'Cause
so
I'm-
you could, even with this proposal, you could still take a motorized vehicle out Brewster Creek Road and come down over 103.
But I'm not on the road. I'm taking single track trails.
You mean off the Brewster Creek Road, you're taking single track trails?
Yeah.
Is that open?
I'm trying to think, I'm not familiar with the trail. Hopefully, you're not incriminating yourself tonight.
You might be, Ken.
Well, that's
Your
why
bail
I'm,
money ready?
no, I mean, that's why I'm here, because I'll be honest with you, what we've been used in the forest, I mean, it's a Forest Service sign, and I mean, we've been in there for years and we maintain it. So,
Maybe on the Deer Lodge side, there might be.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
not
when you hit
familiar
the
with that
very top-
particular trail, Ken, so I don't know.
On Brewster Creek, when you go up
Yeah.
all the way up the top, and then
Right.
the road T's or Y's actually, and it
Right.
goes on up, or you go on over, and it drops back down.
Okay, that
where
would
the
be
old
on the
cabin.
Durham.
Yeah,
That
that would
section
be,
there.
you're
Yeah.
talking like
Yeah.
coming up Brewster and then going over this way, and then you're probably on your left.
Right.
Once you start hitting
And then
trails.
we busted down and had to come back out this way.
I just arrived.
Okay, now, this area here where you went in, this is backcountry, I think, right now.
Yeah, north of Brewster Creek Road.
That is correct.
Okay, so this area here is what we would be recommending for wilderness.
So would those trails stay open in backcountry?
Well, let's take a look at what we've got there, because that, Michael, right under where you were there, that turquoise is backcountry. And in backcountry, let's take a look at the MA description, Daphne, does it
Eligible wild
say?
seed, is that correct? It's this right here,
Right. Blue kind of.
right? Eligible wild seed
Actually,
recreation.
it's 2.2, so it'd be this, the backcountry area.
Oh, I'm one off.
Yeah, so if you went into your management area description, we have a few extras, here we go. Just get this answered for you.
Existing motorized routes may be allowed to exist as corridors through backcountry areas.
Beaver Trail
Trail
Hill is probably
maintenance is necessary.
So your activity would probably remain
It would, where we
in that
went,
particular spot.
where we went the other night. Now I have, like I said, I busted down in there before, and instead of having to pull them all the way back out, we have come back out through a trail over here, so.
Those trails are all age trails, closed year-round to motorized vehicles.
Yeah, and those
And they
night,
have been as long as I can remember.
yeah,
So if
those
you've been
trails.
riding them for years, you've been breaking the law for years.
What I said was, I have broke down, and instead of using a helicopter or something else to come out, I've come out through an area. And I don't know if it's all wilderness,
It
pretty
was
much
a closed
shouldn't be
road
there in the first
anyhow,
place.
a trail.
Even on the trail system, because who's gonna say you're not gonna be hiking and bust a leg, or you're gonna be on a horse and the horse breaks his
I
leg, or
just
you
got
break
what you
down the
meant when you
motorcycle.
said broke down.
Yeah.
I thought you meant you broke down like barriers.
No,
but
mechanic.
No, he broke his
I got you.
motorcycle broke. So, well, Ken, let me ask you now, what, for our purposes tonight, what we don't expect for every one of these management areas that we're gonna reach total agreement.
Yeah,
So, I'll wait till Michael and you folks are done, because I'm thinking if we can tie off 1.2, we can move on. And what I'd like to do is say, if the majority of our table is in favor of what our preferred option here, we would make a note here that we do have at least one person at the table who's not in agreement and would like to see this area remain as motorized, which it isn't right now. There isn't, at this point, you wouldn't be able to take your motorbike into
No, the other
either one of the
parts.
Stony or Fig areas.
Right.
So it's really, it is giving it further protection as wilderness from the roadless designation it currently is, so that actually in your current use, you're not seeing any change.
I understand that.
So if the group is comfortable with that, am I okay to record that for 1.2, we have at least a majority with one person who's not in favor of this area being wilderness?
I just have one question about how is the management of the
Wild and scenic.
within proposed wilderness?
We'll move to that one
Okay.
next, I think, and we'll talk to that, and you can, it doesn't, on either
Oh,
side
right.
of the road.
2.1.
Yeah, on either side of the road, we give ourselves a buffer for, it's the development that's in there already, it's very limited. So, okay, 1.2. Ken, are you comfortable? I don't have to say we have total consensus or agreement, but I do say that the majority of the folks at the table are in favor of as it is, okay?
And I'm the first one to say I don't need to go everywhere. It's all the same kind of country. It's all the same beauty up there. If I can just get through it and have fun, that's all I'm after. I don't need to go to every lake.
You must get very irritated by bikers that don't have your others.
That's just,
I asked,
it's the same in every
I
one
know.
of the
Yes,
counties.
Steve?
why is William Gulch shown in white? private outside the recommended wilderness. On the current map, it's an A trail closed to motorized vehicles year round.
There is we have an agreement there and in the Ranch Creek area as well, further up the drainage with private landowners that are back in there.
There's a cabin.
Private landowners back in Williamsville.
Yes, there must be a house back there.
There's a cabin put there.
I haven't, but I know there's one.
Subdivision at the mouth.
Oh, yes,
It's
that's
been
it, yeah,
gated for
Williamsville,
years.
that's right, yeah.
Going way back up the creek.
Well, it's so that the person could actually drive to their cabin.
It's all the,
I don't think it's set up for what I would.
No, it's,
if you go up there, Steve, you'll see there's a lot of houses in that particular Williams Gulch area.
Are there patent claims once you get up to the, because there was that, remember the mining proposal up there about 10 to 12 years ago?
There's one up,
There is a patent claim.
yeah, there's several up in that, the high end of the drainage.
Wanted to clean up one of those mines.
Okay, so can we move on to 2.1, the Wild and Scenic River Corridor? This is 4.4% of the Rock Creek geographic area. 2.1, yeah. Yeah, easy to get confused. And Daphne, what you asked about relative to we have the certain corridor on this, and I think we talked about last time that the designation here is essentially kind of like the proposed wilderness. We recommend something for wilderness. We also recommend it for a wild scenic river designation, and Congress is the one that has to actually designate. But what our proposal would do is give certain protections to the river. This one is fairly non-controversial in my mind. It protects and brings about all the things that we, the Forest Service, look to in terms of our vision for future management. We don't want to lose any of the protections we've got in place, and in fact, go further.
I don't think this is a good idea.
Really?
You know, we went through this 20 years ago at least. Well, actually, after the first round of planning, you guys had to identify wild and scenic streams, and there was public comment processes. People in Granite County were really happy about this for reasons because they don't quite understand that actually wild and scenic designations, and this would not be wild, this would probably be
Recreation. It would be recreation designation, yeah.
really doesn't bring any sort of additional mandatory protection, with one exception. You can't build a federal dam.
Right.
The president would have to approve it. That's the only thing it does. And I've always felt that Rock Creek has enough for the values that I know everybody at this table cares about relative to watershed values, protecting the corridor and stuff like that. That it's got sort of enough, and it has for a long, long time, enough sort of neon light effect relative to people wanting to protect it and stuff. This is the one really high quality stream that I don't think we really need wild and scenic.
Interesting.
I don't think it's worth the lightning rod effect.
Yeah.
That important.
So
Interesting.
But I don't represent everybody in the conservation committee on this issue. But the thing about Rock Creek is, and for those of us who've been around a bit on this stuff, and most people at this table is, you really have to think in terms of what we're trying to do in this planning process relative to some historical context. Things we've looked at before, examined before, considered before, and essentially reaffirmed before.
right.
Everybody cares about that creek.
Yeah.
Rock Creek's one of these places where nobody wants it to change.
That's exactly right, which is where we were coming from, thinking, well, this is good, because we have a mechanism to at least have this in the
And if this was
hopper.
somewhere else, Wild and Scenic might buy us something. Nothing really buys us something here except some additional
Just-
political friction.
And a designation, if the Congress decides to
Yeah,
approve
Congress
that.
has to do it.
Yeah,
But anyway, that's
knowledge.
it's really, that's good, yeah, we weren't
On the other
there.
hand, I hunt up here. In the fall, I'm allergic to motorbikes.
No,
I could rip Ken.
we're good friends, but no, see, we don't go in any of those places because there's signs up there right now that it's closed from September through December for exactly that. I mean, well, look at our place right now. I mean, Grand Creek, where we have on both on Edie's side and my wife's side, we both have over 5,000 acres of that. We have more cats, we have more deer having their babies and elk having their babies.
Right.
It's like a bear freeway chasing the fawns right now.
Right.
So it works, but that's because of knowledge of what Bruce has. That just makes sense what he said. But I wouldn't know that unless I was in his profession.
Is there,
How do you word that one, Bruce?
Yeah, is there something, I mean, I think that's a great point. If it doesn't buy us anything.
Political
What it came to, if everybody agrees to, the Granite County Commission likes the idea, which is extremely unlikely. Some landowners like yourself that obviously could buy you some additional, actually, they could buy you some additional attention, which isn't necessarily what we even want for Rock Creek.
Right.
But in terms of funding and stuff like that, somebody wanted to propose a federal dam up there, I suppose, but that's my view on it, Maggie. I mean, there's other places I think wild and scenic is really appropriate. I don't think it's necessary or even appropriate.
Okay. Well, how about other folks? If everybody agrees with Bruce, this is a perfect place to put this in. If it's like half and half, it's not a problem.
Can I just ask you a question? You're talking about the political will at the moment to keep Rock Creek what it is because of what it brings to the area. What happens if somehow 20, 30 years down the road that political will, for whatever reason, changes?
Well, that's a risk with everything. The way I look at it is, I'm counting on this going as recommended road.
Right.
So that's a good portion of the Lolo section of the stream corridor here. Why we need, it's almost redundant to have wild and scenic. It's almost redundant. I mean, they're obviously there's still gonna be some activities they can do right along the creek, but they're gonna. I trust the Forest Service to do that stuff in an appropriate fashion, it's appropriate for the larger landscape. No, wild and scenic down where you get into the private land and stuff. I'll tell you one thing, I don't want any more damn public attention on that creek. Bring more people up there, that's part of our problem, resources.
Any thoughts?
He sounds wise beyond his years.
It's really only 25, yeah.
Since we're not very far apart, maybe it's a compliment for yourself.
Just to take your argument into some of the other areas, I mean, all of the 2.1s are within the proposal.
Because the protection's already been beat.
So,
I think it's a very good point.
it might be.
Yeah.
You can use the same argument here.
That's good.
Yeah.
I don't know if I would in the other, I probably would have voted.
Right.
Not about here. It's just sort of.
And I'm understanding what you're saying about the uniqueness of Rock Creek that isn't transposed.
We shouldn't have to have wild and scenic designation.
Well then, what about if we look at the desired condition, which is the thing that we feel we have the most impact on in this collaborative process? One sentence on the last page talks about Rock Creek being managed to protect and improve stream habitat for increased populations of West Slope native cutthroat trout and bull trout, decreased populations of non-native brown trout, fish habitat structured to be replaced in the creek. Things like this to protect the fishery and the creek itself. Do we, by this kind of writing, we don't lose any of this if we don't have that, if we don't have the wild and scenic. And you just asked if we lose anything from even current management if we don't have that. And in your guys' minds, it's kind of, because the desired condition is what we can really, this is how we're going to manage. If we don't have that designation, we'll still be looking to this as to how we manage the river to protect those.
Well, that's where the rubber meets the road.
That's it.
Your desired condition, standards for that.
Right.
But there's a lot of mythology about what a federal wild and scenic designation does or does not do. It doesn't buy as much as a lot of people who hate the federal government say it does.
Okay.
In terms of restrictions.
Okay, so
it's not worth the lightning rod effect.
Are you guys?
I like the argument.
I think it's a great point, and thank you, Bruce, because it isn't one that internally we've come up
Strung up for that, but it's so circles.
I have it in here. Bruce Farley led the day.
I would be much more comfortable if it remained, even though it doesn't actually have much protection. But I'd like to see the upper part of the Welcome Creek be a wild instead of scenic river, but I could live with the scenic designation.
Well, that would be the part we wouldn't have control over.
My big worry is that I was around when Baucus was trying to get his wilderness bill passed, and Williams was trying to get some of these areas in the wilderness. And they said, we cannot have a wilderness all the way to the edge of the creek. No way, absolutely not. The water rights users will come up in arms and defeat the whole bill. So now I'm worried there's going to be a little strip without any without any designation. It's not gonna become recommended wilderness, is it? If we take out the scenic river, what will it become?
It is a good point.
One of these designations or something else.
I don't think so. I think that, like as it is now, what do we have now where the Welcome Creek Wilderness comes right down to the creek? We have nothing that says there's any special designation.
No, but what about, this is different, this is gonna come down to the road.
Right. Well, just like it does at Welcome Creek right now.
Right. Well, Welcome Creek Wilderness is on density.
It's on the roadless side of the river.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
So it's easy,
Comes
it's
down.
easy, you
That's
don't have
right.
someone, you don't have to worry about, in fact, it's good that trees are falling on the creek, but when trees from the wilderness are falling on the road,
Yes.
Forest Service has always wanted to have a little bit of, Magruder corridor, for
Right.
example, always wanted to have a little management strip
Yes.
along roads.
Yeah.
So I think that's what Steve is, I presume, is concerned about. What does that mean about what activities would still be allowed?
And how big would the buffer zone end up being?
There you go. And we, haven't even talked about that. This is the only
That's actually a pretty good issue. It's important.
proposed wilderness we have on the district in this big of a chunk, especially with the road running down the middle of it. Well, what does that do for you? Does that give protection?
Well, I haven't
If
seen
we
it.
maintained it, if we go to wilderness, we maintain the protections along the,
If I knew that the recommended wilderness area goes all the way to the creek, or on the other side all the way to the road, maybe leaving a few yards for management. If I knew that, then I'd withdraw my objective.
I would assume that dark blue would probably turn to this 3.3
How wide is that
corridor all the way down
corridor?
to Rock Creek.
the 3.3 is,
Special
Low
interest.
It
intensity
seems to me
management.
that
why do
the
we call-
older
what's it called?
scenic river was pretty wide. Wasn't it 100 yards or 200 yards wide on each side? Quarter mile, that's a pretty wide area.
But the law, Steve, doesn't prohibit really much in there. You know what you could do, Maggie, is designate these as wilderness, the road corridor along those for, one chain both ways, or, whatever distance, small distance or something, you could call it backcountry.
we
Allows you
could.
to cut a tree down, hazard trees or something like that, or that's along the road, or take care of something that's largely would be managed in a permanent fashion. So basically what you do is you got a gradient, you got wilderness, which is you got the least amount of activity, and then you got some corridor right next to the road.
Buffer.
If you absolutely necessarily have to do some management there, you can under the 2.2, it sounds like.
Would that protect it enough, Steve? Would that work for your argument?
On the other hand, the fisheries people want to be able to sample their creeks and do other management. They have to cut hazards away from the road and weed control.
In my mind, I'm not seeing the difference so much. It's really a political designation difference in my mind. Because the management is actually the same on the ground.
No, if say this wasn't designated wild and scenic, and the legal description of the wilderness went right down to the road, and you guys wanted to do something from the road into the wilderness,
Right.
how could you do it?
Right, and what I'm saying, I agree with that. What I'm saying is that if you had it either backcountry or wild and scenic, it's Mox Nix in my mind. So the difference is more in your mind, there's a difference politically, because it kind of puts us
Hey, you
in
can
the place.
administratively call it backcountry, you gotta go to Congress and make it wild and scenic.
That's right.
But the thing about backcountry is you could talk about the desired condition and the activities that are allowable and the standards. With wild and scenic, you sort of can't as much. Well, you still got to come up with it because it isn't in the law. It doesn't prohibit you on a scenic river from logging. It does say you got to have a later hand on the land or some real general stuff. And there's probably stuff in your handbook.
Yeah, I'm sure there is. So what I'm thinking is that for the group, are we okay to say that our discussion focused around, including protections for the creek, but not giving it the neon light like Bruce was suggesting with the wild and scenic river designation, but perhaps looking at a backcountry designation for the river corridor, and then that's enough for the team because that gives them something to chew on. Does that work for the table?
But not anything much higher than backcountry.
Right,
Yeah, then you're
that's
starting to get
right.
into-
Because like I said, to me, the management is similar, you know, in
Right,
terms of on-the-ground stuff, for both the wild and scenic recreation designation and the 3 for the backcountry.
And more than just looking at backcountry, I'd like to see backcountry recommended this fall when the public parks.
Right, and that's what we will get out of this, like Chuck was saying, that after tonight, the team gets all of our agreements, they go back and talk about, this makes a lot of sense, and I suspect that there's been some of this discussion at some of the other tables as well, so. Okay, so I'm gonna make this note here, and then how about we move into 2.2, which is the turquoise, I think, the backcountry areas.
Same feelings there. I'd like to see all the little tributaries protected for spawning. These are conditions being non-motorized along the tributaries at least, except where there's existing
No, I
roads
know
and
that.
trails.
Okay. So Steve, point out some of the things that you would change in this preferred option.
I don't think I could change anything,
Oh, okay. So does this provide,
other than I'm not so sure about that Welcome Mountain Road. There. If that has to remain open, that used a lot for recreation.
Welcome Mountain Road?
Guys.
If I can-
Your hunting guys.
You gotta
have
come
their
in from the
permits.
bitter route on that. It's this little
That's one I know of. That's really all that I know of.
This road that comes in from the bitter route, Miller Creek, 4249, and it ends right 3 miles from the creek.
Those quite a ways over crosses strong.
What do we have on the preferred option map that's outside of that turquoise, just to the north of it? Is that 3-3?
3-4-1.
4-1, okay. That,
So that bombed out stuff.
yeah, that's what I'm thinking, that the backcountry probably serves as a bit more of a buffer between the wilderness and the 4.1, which is moderate or, moderate level of management.
Now, this gets to the area Hannah was talking about in terms of existing.
Oh, there isn't one for sports and local.
That's right.
Yeah.
If you
Well,
go
I
over
mean,
8 miles,
again,
drop down to that river local creek.
a guide with a permit, when it all comes down and the water's all boiled pure, is no different than somebody just going up there that's from California and they have no clue where they're going.
Right.
The difference is the guide is never going to hurt a tributary and he'll go completely out of his way. But if it's a trophy elk and they've quartered it, they've done their best to get it out, and a machine is the easiest way to do it, and it's in sub whatever, guess what? They would like to use that road to get out of there, and it's more of a safety. It's not because they didn't try it another way.
And
And for me, it's opposite that whole season. It's a few times a year that for some reason we need to get out of there. And we're gonna use a road to come out to a main head, like you're saying. And if it's the Bitterroot side, well, then you get out there to where you can get your cell phone and call somebody to come and get you.
so are you comfortable with the backcountry designation right here?
With the majority, because I don't have a need to go through there. I can still use exactly like what we were saying to the other
All right.
side. However, to close, I know that is used for guides, and I think that you'll probably get some words about that because they're using it. That's their profession, and they use pack teams most all the time. I mean, I've seen the horse trailers way up in there, but But I think that there's times when they gotta get people out of there, and they'll use that, or use a snowmobile if they have to, and use it on that road.
So you're saying under this new preferred option,
Yeah.
that road would be closed?
No,
I
I'm
didn't-
saying that
yeah.
It would, as long
Roads
as
that
there
are
was
already
Right,
there and
yeah,
you
okay.
use stay open.
That's what I'm thinking, so I think
Yeah.
things are status quo.
opposed to what
Yeah.
And I have, yeah.
I don't
Still
want to
subject to some future transportation plan if you guys.
It is.
Yeah. What's this is, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, a lot of the site-specific closures or route restrictions or whatever is future.
Yeah.
Okay, so if we're comfortable with the backcountry areas, then let's move then to, I'm just gonna say that the group agreed that we're good with the preferred
That's still the
option.
highest and best use.
Okay? All right, how about 3.3? This is the general forest,
oh, there are.
low intensity. And there's only 1.2% in the Rock Creek area.
Right
Those
here.
and then these little spurs that come off the creek are 3.3. Williams, Gulch, and
that were true.
Williams Gulch, and there's part of Ranch Creek that,
On the road there.
so there's,
Why are you looking at that between Kitchen Gulch and Babcock? That face? For wildlife?
yeah,
For sheep
that's in
and
the
stuff
sheep,
like that?
the Bighorn Sheep Winter Range area. And I'm wondering if it's hunting and the wild, if you read the designated, I'm sorry,
There for the sheep.
Why isn't that then 2.2?
Well, it could be 2.2 and it's still
One can go with it,
they've
or
learned.
one person can carry it.
I think they've taken a few trees out. Helicopters out.
yeah, and I think,
But it's been what, the old plan is primarily wildlife is the emphasis because it's
Yeah.
winter range.
Yeah, there. Yeah, you're right.
thinking there was something that we wrote about that in particular in here. We may have to mention it specifically for the desired condition, because there's something about that area that's kind of a unique bighorn sheep habitat. The winter range, it's not very many places like that, and we may have it 3.3 because of weed control stuff. You know, in our just a couple years ago, EIS for aerial weed spraying, Babcock was a real,
Months ago, there's been an issue about that.
yes, there has, yeah.
Okay.
So I think there was some wisdom in that particular designation for that chunk.
That makes sense to have it 3.3 instead of
It
2.2.
would, it would. I think it has less to do with timber harvest than it does with just general
You
management.
could change it.
what's the current policy on weed control in backcountry? Or
Well, right now, we have no backcountry. This is
Right,
a new
okay.
designation.
But what would it
So
be?
like
But
in a
what-
roadless area or in general, we have to have an EIS
What's the
decision
new-
on all.
MA for backcountry, what's the weed? Can you go in on this?
I'm looking, Maggie, you're looking.
No.
Yeah, outfitted guides, recreation stock users may graze, encouraged to pack weed free,
I'm just looking here.
manage fire.
You know, Michael, I think it'd be, I don't expect we'd see anything specific here because across the entire forest, wherever we use chemicals to treat noxious weeds, it requires a NEPA decision. So, we do the same thing for wilderness. We would do the same thing for every other piece of country. So that has to take place in any place on the forest, no matter what the NA is.
So if, because of its wildlife value, that was put into a 2.2, you could still do what you needed to control it.
That's right, yeah. Our intent there is to protect that bighorn sheep habitat, and so that gives us the flexibility to do that. Now, the other places, those corridors, Ranch Creek and Williams Gulch, I'm kind of assuming it's the same reason there. It has less to do with, there's private land in there, but there's a lot of weed issues in there. And so I'm thinking we probably went that same designation because of that.
Maybe get further down, because the sheep are further down.
Yeah, the sheep would be,
Sometimes you see more sheep further down than by the.
Yes, you do. Yeah. And if we need some more clarification about this one, we can write that into our
We need some
agreement here.
clarification because it seems like the rationale is a bit different for that piece down here than they're going to be for Ranch Creek.
Yes.
Okay.
I can't figure out why you do it on this too.
Yep, good. Let's get
I don't think it's
this.
the wildlife. Maybe it's weeds.
No, I
but-
think it might be weeds down there with all those different subdivisions, and in Rancho Creek, it's just one or two landowners, I think, but down in Williams Gulch, it's a slug of them. Yeah. And when we ask the question, Bruce, I think Wayward will know the answer right off the bat when we ask it in the larger group, because he may know exactly why we designate.
So we'd have the same issue on the corridor, on the road. It was a wild scene instead of backcountry.
Then we still have a weed problem.
Hey, I mean, obviously, the county's not wasting any, you guys have done some spraying too.
Oh, yeah, yeah. So your point is that
My point is, what's the most
those could
appropriate
be,
designation for roadside spraying or weed control of any nature?
Okay.
Cannabis, whatever. What's the most appropriate when the surrounding countries either backcountry or
okay. So I'm putting, what's the most appropriate MA when surrounding country is backcountry or wilderness?
once you got a road, once you
So is everybody's tracking that question? And in my mind, it makes sense to answer that question clearly because of the Babcock area and those two corridors there being 3.3. We may not be buying ourselves anything with that designation. We could stay with backcountry in those areas.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think you almost could on Babcock, but I know what you guys are doing up there. You're burning.
Right.
You've taken a few trees and you've largely thinned the understory to maintain bunch grasses for the sheep.
That's right.
And you've done some spraying, so it's sort of like got this wildlife priority. But under 3 point, if you read the
Yeah.
MA on that, wildlife is under priority.
Right.
And that's what I'm thinking too, Bruce, is if we make the designation because of wildlife, we should describe that very clearly in our desired condition, and I don't see it in here very well.
Yeah.
Okay, great point. Let's see, backcountry is 2.0. How we doing on time, Chuck? Oh, good, okay. Sure. Yeah, we're at a good spot. Now we're gonna move, I think, are we okay moving into
Yeah.
4.1? And 4.1 is the tannish stuff, I believe. Okay, and that is 22.8% of this area. So you may want to take a look at the 4.1 description here to see what kind of management we're doing there.
Place.
Shut up.
There's more
Let
reason
other
for
people
it,
talk.
what it is.
Like the motorheads.
No way, man. Before
We obviously know each other
Oh,
well.
yeah. Yeah, we get along great. We both have the same heart. He's not allergic to horses, probably. Well, 4.1, I know that a lot of that is because it's private property and people
Yeah.
have their cabins and
Right.
they've lived up there forever, and so,
I mean, just like even Glacier National Park, there's people that are.
yeah, so I'm sure that's a large part of why that's 4.1.
Now, this one to me is a little funky.
Well, I know that,
Because it's kind of scattered.
I was just saying the basic reason is because there's private property up there.
There
and
is.
So you have your dog, your kids, your whatever, and so that's probably how it got started, and it's never been
Well, it's
changed.
severely roaded
Yeah,
over
look
on
at
that
this.
side. It's lots and lots of past harvest in that area. And it does come up to the divide. So it was a decent.
I can see how that was that way back when.
And then it fits right in on
Yeah.
the better road.
So people coming from the Bitterroot side, that's high use over there.
I guess one thing we've talked about is the 4.1 button right up against
Yeah.
proposed wilderness, and if there was any way to create a buffer zone
That'd be neat.
2.2.
and start
Yeah.
and maybe close, up towards the wilderness, close a few roads.
Now, this is where we get into it, the discussion with the adjacent forest. There is the Sapphire Divide Trail that runs up, that we have to make sure I have this right. We advocate, in our preferred option, want to have that as a non-motorized trail. And there is a segment, I believe, still on the Bitterroot that is going to be motorized. And I honestly know enough to be dangerous about that because I have yet to go up there and look at it on the ground. But in talking with folks that have had use up there, we can get to that non-motorized designation if we still provide opportunities in that area that's in the 4.1. There may be some other routes that might be available. So
In order to make that piece of the Crest Trail non-motorized?
Right.
Okay. That's-
So my
yeah.
sense is that folks that were here before me had some agreements already in place that that system of roads just this side of that divide are critical to their enjoyment there. And so in order for us to get to that non-motorized route, we allow that 4.1 designation. If we went to backcountry, we might.
If it was that quid pro quo, you know, fine.
Yeah, we are too.
And I don't know enough about the roads in that area to know what kind of opportunities are there. That would be a future kind of discussion and debate.
But,
Actually, you raised a couple of really big issues. One we'll talk about a little bit later about how to deal with adjoining forests and how that affect the values you're trying to protect.
Right.
You know, Maggie, I looked at the descriptions of these two MAs, 4.1 versus 5.1. I don't see a lot of difference. I mean, I see a lot of room for interpretation where a 4.1 could become a 5.1 sort of approach. And I would really like you guys to think of it. And maybe, you know, keep the 4.1, keep the title or whatever, but in terms of the desired condition, knowing some of this country, it's been treated pretty harshly over the years. And I think everybody here would agree that. You know, I'm not against logging and stuff like that, but and I would really like to see somehow, just a recommendation from me and my organization also, have one of these, a 3.1 or a 4.1 sort of, be fairly explicit that an emphasis is restoration of sort of legacy problems. You know, we may manage it to continue to cut some trees over there, keep some roads open and stuff like that, but we've got to do it.
Right.
And the emphasis is sort of a restoration emphasis. Because we've got poorly managed forests in there, we've got weeds in there, we've got bad roads, I'm sure we got some bad culvert problems, we've got sediment problems and all that stuff.
Okay.
And so, I really think you kind of need to turn this around a little bit. Let's still have that, you know, an active kind of management in there, but a little more sensitive than we've done in the past. But I read this, it almost reads like the old forest plan.
It reads mostly for commodity production.
They are allowed to be.
I'm just saying, we should talk about restoration of these areas with commodities.
So what is 3.3? Does that
Well, that's what
and does that have any restoration theme anywhere in there?
It's more about recreational and managing. Well, it is about managing vegetation, isn't it?
It says some. They're not suitable for timber production, although things like salvage, fuel reduction kind of work there.
I see nothing about restoration.
Emphasizes ecosystem management.
Okay.
Loosely.
Can mean
Restore.
Very good point.
But it needs
Okay.
to be more specific.
Yeah, you need another key word or something.
But again, if we don't have the option to do a lot of edits to the management area descriptions, which we're told we don't, the desired condition is the place that we'd want to focus on. So one thing, Bruce, like you say, if the table suggests that we change that MA description to a 3.3, we can say that that's what this table is in favor of, but we can also do some tweaking of this desired condition and give it some more specific wording that would speak to restoration of that particular area.
I would agree.
You like that, okay?
Yeah, because then what you're doing is you have a little bit of a hook there that you can have. If you're going to turn livestock or you're going to have somebody go up and do some salvage logging, at least you could write it into their contract that they restore or add value back to get it back to its prior to. I mean, that's always been a key point.
Right. And
those people that did all this damage are all with a tombstone downtown.
Right.
So the only thing we can do in our generation is where they're stuck at the lumberjack saloon and they won't come out.
Well, that's what Rock
But-
Creek's all about, you know?
Yeah, but I know that you could write it in so that at least you could set a hook to have somebody then add value back to that.
Right, and what you'd be writing it in is this, you'd
That's
be
correct.
changing the desired conditions. So am I hearing that the group suggests we do some editing of the desired condition in Rock Creek for that particular 4.1 area? Those two, the 4.1 areas to lean a little bit more toward.
Crest there, that's you know, Van Saddle, all that country. I mean,
Okay.
It's pretty obliterated. It's been obliterated.
and actually, some of the stuff up Gilbert Creek, which is we are talking about here. So.
Yeah. Would you all suggest that that at least for the Sapphire Divide 4.1, is the consensus to change it to 3.3 or to leave it at 4.1? And changing the desired condition?
If changing the desired condition and the restoration.
Okay.
What did you get
And
that?
if there was that would still give you, and I know we're getting into what you're talking about in terms of neighboring forests.
Right.
If that would still give you leverage, I mean, not leverage is one word, you know,
They give you options to where you
options
could,
to work with the crest trail.
Yeah, okay. Okay, so we agree that the,
Throw one thing out. I was around, I think, 12 years ago. There's a moratorium on logging in the whole drainage. And I wonder, do we want to abandon that? Or do we want to have the desired condition include no logging?
well, where we have,
I don't know, I'm not sure if that's what we want to do in this day and age with the fire hazard and everything. I just wanted to throw that out to see how others feel.
is that moratorium still in place?
I don't know. I think I never heard of it being overturned.
I don't know, that's the Lolo Accords, I don't even know what's become of those.
Your lot.
880s, Orville Daniels and Van Ellsberg, who was the supervisor in like 88 or 9, and the Deer Lodge agreed, as I talked about it, Tom Friends told me, that Deer Lodge had these huge plans in the forest, kind of like 45 million board feet, just really inappropriate places. And Van and is sort of what I want to get at some point here maybe. Van and Orville decided that the two forests would not necessarily have a moratorium, but what they would do was they would scale back their commercial timber program out there, what they had planned for the next 5 to 10 years.
Right.
Van cut back that 40 million to like one sale that was off of the West Fork. And Orville really didn't have it. So they said, there'll be no commercial timber. So, we can go in, fire bugs, emergency,
Right.
stuff like that. That's still going to be okay. Until we've done a large-scale ecosystem analysis of the whole watershed, top to bottom, relative to what the effects of commercial timber activities would do and what do the people want. And I think the Lolo, I think both forests have largely still, at least unofficially, adhered
I
to
think
that.
you're right, because
And
the work that we have done in there has been fuel reduction work.
it's been low-key.
So I suspect it's probably still in the spirit of that agreement anyway, if it's not a formal kind of a thing.
Would that be, fit into the 3.3 low
Yes,
intensity?
it would, yeah.
Post and pole, winter roundwood, all kinds of names have been used over the years to allow little bits of logging here and there.
Yeah,
But no big commercial logging.
yeah, that would be the difference.
Except for there were a couple that were
Some
on
of
the
the timber
fence.
base, right? Do you guys have to do ASU?
No, we're not, we don't have that same type of allocation. So,
The idea, fundamentally, those guys said the expectations for commercial wood fiber that we're going to kick off our two forests were not going to include Rock Creek, except Van had one project that they were already doing.
Yeah.
And that's largely how it's been
Yeah.
since the late 80s. I think people have largely been happy about it. Even the industry guys haven't said go in and log.
right, right. And just recently, when we've been up there with industry, same thing. It's just,
broad,
There aren't that many trees.
It's leaving alone is a big step toward restoration.
that's right.
Yeah.
Well, the thing I have that we have close to agreement on, I think maybe it's not the right designation, but we want to add a restoration emphasis to the desired condition for the Sapphire Crest area. The part I didn't get down was whether or not the group is in agreement to look to change that Sapphire Crest designation from 4.1 to 3.3.
I would be fine as long as you could still be able to have enough wiggle room to with the bitter, the bitter rules.
That, because if they say they're 5.1,
Yeah.
then going to 3.3 isn't really helping.
And then removing the motorized piece on the Sapphire Crest Trail maybe off the table.
Okay. Any other, Fred, did you have any concerns there?
You're talking about changing the 4.1 to 3.3
Right.
over here.
That's right, in that spot.
If you do that, you're going to change the 4.1 and the 3.3 up here.
Well, we didn't, the 4.1 above Babcock is that the tan way up there. Yeah, we haven't talked about changing that at all. And,
See, if you change it down here, then without thinking, somebody reading it will assume you can change it up here.
well, what I've been hearing is that this conversation was specific to the Sapphire Crest relative to the trail and all those different roads up there. You can just leave it down, Ron. It's just going to keep falling. The other areas, though, Fred, I don't know that we would want to be changing because those areas do have some commercial, maybe there's some reason to get into there for some commercial products. I think that this Sapphire Divide Trail down there has a little bit different restoration kind of desire the group is expressing than these areas up here.
In my opinion, you can change this to 3.3 down here. But I don't want to see this 3.3 increase.
Okay.
And if you word it a little loosely, that'll be my interpretation.
I got it. So I need to be careful how I write it, is what you're saying, so that we don't say all of the 3.3 in here gets changed. I got it. So I'm specifically mentioning this as Sapphire Crest here. Okay. Anything else on the 4.1? Okay.
Sure about logging up there, keeping the bulk back up, right? I still advocate for keeping the moratorium up there.
That is back to 3.3
No,
there,
that's
right?
the 4.1 area. That's what Red was talking about. Although I don't think most of the table wanted to keep the moratorium.
Yeah, I don't think we need to worry about that for a long time.
Okay.
Not much trees up there.
Be surprised where you
Maybe on
see
the
them
other
logging
side.
now, right in the middle of big logging areas like that. Go around Lolo Path, still logging.
Are you okay, Steve, if we move down to 5.1? Is there any 5.1 in
There is none.
Rock Creek? Okay. Oh, yeah, 0 acres. All right. Is everybody okay with that? There is no 5.1?
Oh, no, we won't.
Okay. So you're okay with that? So no troubles with that?
Looks like more than 6.6% on the map.
It's just a long, skinny strip. That's probably,
That all popped up on
yeah.
checkerboard. On this name.
Okay, well, you know what? We have covered all the MAs except for, let's see. Oh, the only other option I have on the form here is if there are other areas that you all want to talk about that you have some suggestions on.
Geographic.
Or Rock Creek.
Just for Rock Creek now, is there anything else that, so Sharon made this form today, it was just like other thoughts, for Rock Creek.
Well, I would like, Bruce, you said that you would like to talk more about the adjacent
Yeah, and Meg probably heard from other people about this thing. Again, think about the historical context about Rock Creek. Go back and look at all the history, all the efforts and all the heartburn relative to protecting this or developing that. One thing that's always floated up to the top is that, like I said, people really like it the way it is. They like the different kind of recreational experiences you get up there. You know, you can go camp along the road, but it's primitive, it's semi-primitive off the road. You can, fishing is obviously superb. Hunting is obviously superb. I mean, there's just there's recreational opportunities from everybody from families to people who like more primitive stuff. Here's what I'm concerned about. I really like largely what we've got here. I think you guys have done a really good job. We've all pretty much affirmed that tonight to some extent. What I'm worried about is the values we're talking about here, we're trying to protect down here, and these ones I've talked about from a historical context, they're affected by what happens up here in the Deer Lodge. So you guys have got to figure out a way to have the Deer Lodge and the Lolo have essentially the same sort of scheme, in my view anyway, same priority, watershed, wildlife, fish, recreation, keeping it as it is. And because those guys could do stuff up here that could really affect stuff downstream. I know that from at least a watershed or fishery perspective, it's already happening. And so, this is the only place in this whole forest, and it's one of the few places, if you look in the state, where you got a national forest, or a large watershed with all these values that's bifurcated by two national forests.
Right.
It's essentially an arbitrary political line.
And potentially two different management
Right. We got it. And what I would really like, I'm going to encourage you guys to try and export some of the stuff you're hearing, that you're thinking about already, to these guys.
Okay, good. This is good. Now, the Deer Lodge, Beaverhead Deer Lodge has already come out with their draft. Have you seen what they have?
Yeah,
Is
we're
anything
kinda going
really
through it now.
major conflict with what
haven't
you
gone
see
through the
here?
whole thing.
Okay, so that may be one thing that, all of us can look at, because we've got 4 more meetings after tonight that we'll have an opportunity to do some more fine-tuning of this. So this will be good for us to have it tracked and try to
And
get back
that's
to
what the two forests were trying to do way back. They started in the 80s.
Yeah.
And have stayed fairly consistent. When it's come to project by project, I think the Phillipsburg district has been a little more cavalier than, in my view, than say the Missoula district. But nonetheless, the two forests broadly have recognized it's a pretty special place.
Yeah.
And we wouldn't want to do anything dramatic relative to changing the values up here. And obviously, I got certain biases, professional and personal. But the fishery's stressed right now, and it's stressed for a bunch of reasons: for habitat reasons, climate reasons, and to a certain extent, I think some of the recreational use is starting to have some effects on it. If we want to have it sustainable and maintain that kind of high value attractiveness it's always had, that a lot of people have been around have known about, we have to think about it.
Good. Okay, other thoughts?
Bruce has an excellent point. I mean, after all, we're going to have a Bitterroot and Lolo together in 2 weeks. Why not have the Deer Lodge and Lolo together?
Good point. Okay, I'm just writing these thoughts down so I don't lose them. So specific to Rock Creek, you're suggesting it'd be good to have a coordinated meeting even, so that they can hear.
Is
It's
the
probably,
Deer Lodge doing a plan revision like
their
we
draft
are?
is already out,
Are they
Steve.
doing it under the old?
They are, which is why they've come out with their draft already. Maybe if nothing else, I can get a couple copies and bring it for the next meeting, or the next, couple meetings.
Gotcha probably has one of them right now.
So, Maggie, in this process, are there any actual sort of measurable standards that you guys are going to have to maintain either in one of these allocations or in the Rock Creek drainage, or that's going to tell you that it's not working out, you didn't do the right thing, or desirable condition isn't the right. I mean, and I'm talking about obviously habitat quality, things you can measure, water quality, fish, recreational satisfaction.
My understanding
understanding of the standards is that, yes, we will have them, that they will be measurable, but the reality of being able to measure them and monitor them is...
Do you want ideas?
Yes, we would love ideas. Because in the standards discussion, we've kind of made it fairly clear, both internally and when we've talked about this to the groups, is that, if we come out of this whole collaborative thing with any change in the desired condition, that's going to be huge. If we get agreement on the desired condition, that's great stuff. If we had lots of time, we'd talk about the standards, we'd talk about monitoring. But reality dictates that we aren't going to have a lot of budgets to go toward monitoring. And so it's going to be, the standards are going to be these goals, kind of statements that we shoot for, and then it's a kind of a gut thing, knowing if we're meeting it or not. And the monitoring is what we'd really love to be able to do. But budget issues are what force us to say, let's not spend a lot of people's valuable time setting up standards and monitoring guidelines when we know we aren't going to be able to budget for them.
Well,
Yes, it's huge, yes.
I don't know if what you've done is working. Otherwise, we have measurements before and after. You don't know. Frankly, you can't defend it one way or the other.
Yeah.
You can't say, here's the science.
That's right. It's problematic.
I have a comment too.
Okay.
To help everybody.
Good.
Would that preclude that sometimes you might pick or choose a higher designation, which has stricter criteria because you're not going to be able to go in there and monitor things?
Perhaps. Yeah. But honestly, I think that when the planners have come up with these designations with all the district employees' input, we aren't looking at designating something based on whether or not we think we can monitor for it. I think we're looking at more this kind of overall desired feel for that particular piece of country.
Well, you have to do more with less. So that means the private sector has to come into play.
Yeah.
That's where Five Valleys Land and Trust, all the way out to a motorcycle club, becomes so hugely important. Because obviously I love my sport and I love my wife's sport, which is horses. So guess what? How many thousands of dollars we put into that a year?
Yeah.
If you get those, whether a fly fishing club or a hiking club or a Lolo Tea club and a motorcycle club, and you have key people that you can feed off of to get information to help you, I don't want to say help police because my sport takes me everywhere out of the state, and I have nothing in the state for competitive nature. So I'm looking at it through a lens that have had some great successes and some horrible failures.
Right.
But I've seen the most successes when you can take private parties and their resources with their monies to help you say this is and this isn't working and here's why. And we've seen it over a course of whatever that period of time is.
Right.
And I just got back again from Idaho, and they have got more forest there than everywhere, it seems like, and they have got a great system, but what they're using is they're using the economic base of private money to help them get there. And I mean, that's, if you got to pull out your camera phone and you have no cell coverage, you can still take a picture of somebody doing something naughty.
And that works.
There's what you got, and you do that time and time and time again. You start gaining help for the people that are really concerned, the people that are sitting here right now. So that's my suggestion, and that's from my wife doing things and knowing her world in Colorado. I just printed an article that I just got in a publication today that Riverside County has put a moratorium on private parties owning 100 acres of land and told them that they cannot operate a motorized vehicle, period. Riverside County produces how much in milk and dairy and hay, and a farmer can't use a four-wheeler? I mean, it's gone too far. His own land.
They've been talking to the Supreme Court. That's really getting...
So my point is that I was born here, my kids have moved away because economic things, well, they double their income and they move just to Washington State. They will want to come back here.
Right.
Well, if we say no to something now, my reason for being here is we need to think way beyond our generations, because the people are coming in from these outer states and countries where things are different. So if you say, well, no motorized, but then there's a bunch of people that have horses, 2 more generations come in and they don't like the smell of horses, pretty soon now you can't even have a horse on your own private property. Pretty soon you get to where you're in Riverside, California, where you're a farmer and you can't even operate your equipment, and it's on your own private land and they call it a moratorium. So we need to do things, the whole evolutional cycle needs to be thought out from the top. Well, private money is where it starts.
And my feeling about this whole thing, I don't think we're far enough along in writing some of the plan yet that we have taken in the how-to of implementing some of these things. This would be like this kind of zoning, programmatic, visionary type document. But we do need to have some of this in there. How do we expect to monitor and make sure we're doing what we said we're going to do, and that the feel is what we want it to be? And I think that this is a good thing for us to be able to track, so that by the time it does go out to the general public, we have some good statement somewhere, and it could be in the desired condition statement for the whole forest. We handed those out last meeting, that talks about how we will monitor and use private citizens and user groups and whatnot to help us get there. But there's got to be a greater faction of folks out there, not just relying on people who use the forest, but maybe, I don't know what it would be, but somehow we have to get to that.
I was reading, went back and reread some fisheries stuff. I was reading, not that old, it was like 1997, last time Fish and Wildlife Parks did a creel survey. The creel survey is a survey of the anglers, what they're catching, where they're catching, they're harvesting. Also asked some questions about their quality of experience and what they expect from the creeks. And it's a fairly scientific survey and stuff. And it was that, don't change it. We like it the way it is. In fact, it's getting better and stuff like that. So I'm going to go out on a limb here. I think there's probably nowhere else in this forest, maybe even western Montana, public lands, we could take a whole watershed like this, and you could find as many people as you could to agree on sort of like the general sort of tone for management.
I would agree with that.
Yeah. I mean, I doubt if you guys have had the people knocking down your door and saying, "Oh, we got to be logging this, mining that, putting in ATV play areas or something like that." And so it's a real good opportunity. You guys take a breather and actually probably not have too many people give you a lot of crap about what you decide here.
No, in fact,
we already know what people want.
And I can really attest to that, just being new to this job. Instantly, I could pick up the flavor that folks like Rock Creek the way it is. So I totally echo what you're saying.
Except for the wild scenic recreational could.
Well, but what you have to do is you have to separate the allocation with the experience and the sort of values that people derive from here. And if you do that, the problem is in the planning process, you got to put an allocation on that. Comes a lightning rod, wilderness. People like wilderness, little wilderness right now in Twig Peak and Stony. That's what, and once we make the recommendation with the big wilderness to Congress, then it becomes a lightning rod.
Yeah.
What's that?
They're having a lot of time in the Lolo forest. Tougher time with getting agreement.
In the Bitterroot?
Yeah.
Oh, because he's got yours.
Oh, Lolo Peak, not the bit, because this is the Lolo forest. Then.
Well, I mean, no, I'm saying on the low, on this, right here, the other corridor.
Oh, on the Bitterroot.
The Bitterroot. They are.
Yeah.
Man.
They are.
We've got everything from people behind themselves to
Yeah. So, any other thoughts? Before we'll pull everybody together, we need somebody to be willing to read out what our agreements are at the table.
Apropos of any of this, but following up Bruce's comments, that this has historical unanimity. Everybody wants to do it. We have learned a long history of it. 2 weeks from now, we're going to be over here, and obviously it's going to be like a totally different story. And I'm curious to educate me, asking the question. If somebody wanted to do something in here, what happens to these? What are the long-term effects of some of these designations? Obviously, this is future voters. The turquoise areas and possibly all these things. Where are they going to be in terms of the next 10 years?
They will be as they will be designated. So in a year from now, when this forest plan is decided, and if it doesn't get litigated and all, then that designation will be in place 10 to 15 years until we revise the forest plan again. If in between now and the time the forest plan's revised next time, there is a Montana wilderness bill and those areas actually get into formal designated wilderness, they will forever be wilderness. And so, unless Congress made a decision to go back and change them otherwise.
These
Not likely.
designations are intended for the duration of the plan.
They are
And the plan's duration is what, 10
10 to
to 15
15 years.
But it could be amended.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. In fact, this.
And under the new rules, that is quite much easier.
It is, it's gonna be, we really struggled with amending the forest plan under the rule that we had been in until they just changed here in the last few months.
How is it different now?
Well, under the new rule that we're under now, it's very easy to say we want to change this particular allocation because of thus and so, and it just goes through a quick process. And it's not even a NEPA process, a National Environmental Policy Act process.
So basically, you want to think about how much more time it will put into this process.
Because it could change
right.
tomorrow.
Yeah.
But if
Is it really significantly likely that something would be changed in place? Obviously, we've got a whole lot of consensus here.
You do.
Not a lot of reason to think that consensus would change. There's no time to plan to do something.
But move over to where you're talking about in 2 weeks, there's a potential for a lot of change, is that correct?
Well, that's,
you mean changes on, it may be that this particular forest plan revision process keeps everything like it is. And what you're asking, in 5 years, could somebody come back and change what was decided around this, in this process? Is that what you're asking?
It's possible anywhere across the forest. Usually in any of those kind of situations, and in one that has so much controversy and public interest, it wouldn't be an easy, hand stroke with that kind of thing. I've been involved in forest plan amendments on other forests that I've worked on, and they have been very large processes, long, drawn out kind of issues. They're usually not taken very lightly. I don't know that we'd see very many of them after this process. Do you guys have a sense in your mind? It seems to me that, they were problematic a lot in the older plan, in the plan we're still under, because we had little teeny management areas. We had so many of them that it was easily understood once you got into an area, like, well, why did we designate it like this? It's only 50 acres and it should have been part of the bigger adjacent MA. Those kind of things happen. So that's why I kind of think we'll see less of that as we move forward.
You know something, Megan, if you could kind of think about it, all this stuff, we don't have to necessarily discuss it tonight, but how this is going to help you in the next 10 or 15 years when you get requests to improve that road. How it's going to affect actually the management of our growth forests. Whether it's going to continue to be this sort of battle by battle situation that you're going to or if you guys are going to be able to have a really consistent direction. No secret, in my view, is it's not crappy enough. The reason is that it's not to be elitist or anything like that. Is when you can love a place to death with a road that's too good, and it's a good disincentive to have a road that's just a little more uncomfortable.
It's true.
It's a good passive way to regulate rather than having government come in with permits and stuff like that. People have to decide that I'm going to wear out my shopping circus a little bit because I like it.
Yeah. Take a look though at where is the desired condition, Bruce, for the road is, we listed it in here.
Oh, you did, I didn't see
And we
that.
spoke, it would continue to be primary public access. The road would be managed to maintain the existing character of the drainage, meaning that while general use may increase due to factors outside the geographic area, the road would not be improved to encourage or invite either additional use or use by larger commercial or recreational vehicles. Okay.
We got it.
Okay, can I read what I have here in terms of agreements, and then if we have any changes, because I bet you we're going to wind down and get into the reporting out. And who would somebody other than me like to report? I'd rather have a member of the group than me do this. Anybody?
For talking.
Ken, why don't you do it?
I actually am going to leave. I still have to go back to the bank if you're going to leave.
You have to go back to work. Okay. Anybody else? Michael?
Sure.
Right. The first one, recommended wilderness, the majority was in favor as proposed, and I mentioned here that one person disagreed with that designation. Wild and scenic river designation, consider changing the wild and scenic river designation to backcountry 2.2 along the corridor. This designation doesn't bias anything, but perhaps beyond light attention to the Rock Creek drainage. Okay. Backcountry areas 2.2, this table was good with the preferred option. 3.3, the low intensity of general forest mixed uses. I have what is the most appropriate management area when its surrounding area is backcountry or wilderness. Shouldn't Babcock, Williams Gulch, and Ranch Creek be backcountry 2.2? So I see that as an agreement by this table that we think that designation may not be appropriate there. Okay. 4.1, we want to have the Sapphire Crest Trail to be non-motorized. Need to coordinate this with the Bitterroots. And we want to add some restoration emphasis to the desired condition description for the Sapphire Crest area. And then we were okay in general, I think, with the 4.1 areas to the north end of the geographic area. Fred, you were okay with that? Okay. 5.1 was there wasn't any, and we were okay with there not being any of the high-intensity forest management areas. 5.2 is that yellow intermix, and we were okay with that. And then the only other comments I made is that people like Rock Creek the way it is, that water, wildlife, fish values on adjacent forests need to be coordinated. Especially Deer Lodge, okay? B-bar D is what it is.
She's right.
And then we want to somehow get the Beaverhead Deer Lodge Forest to coordinate with us on their side of the Rock Creek drainage. And that may just simply mean we get a copy of their draft and see what it is, and see if we can inject some change if we need to.
I would really recommend that. I don't know how you
forest to sort of coordinate this, but make it so,
Higher, better.
you know, you could call it a 2.2 here, and they could call it a C.7.
Yeah, 'cause
there.
it'll be different
But it should have
there.
sort of the same desirable condition standards if eventually gets. Just for simplicity for the public. I hate to, well, when you're past Stony Creek, if you're down past Stony Creek, you're on the Lolo. I can't help you.
Yeah, that's right.
You know how it
Yeah,
is.
oh, I do, yeah.
Everybody looks at you guys as
Yeah.
one.
Yeah, it's a great point. So, yeah, you might want to make that point.
In fact, this is,
Yeah. 10 minutes and then, yeah, and unless everybody else, if they're wound up. Oh, okay.
that's,
Okay. Okay, perfect.
as long as the cooperates, that we can just stay above there.
Yeah, and that, yeah, let's
But
put
as long as
that.
it's, if it's to cooperate to make it all done, authorized, we're totally against that.
Okay, so then you still like the idea of that 4.1 area that we're suggesting might need, if that goes to 3.3.
I don't know, I'm okay with the sapphire sheet closed.
You just want to make sure we offer some loop.
Exactly. So accordingly.
Have you ever hiked down in where that hike is on Saturday?
It's just like what we were talking about right here.
Yes.
I'm okay if
I mean, either I'll do the hike and I'll find out I can do it, or else I'll do the hike and I'll be wrecked.
Yes, today's 60, this is the
And I
right
won't be
to
able
get
to
out to the other
do
side. Somebody says, well, if we close this gate, you're going to close
So
everything.
when will we know if we're able to take vehicles to get closer to?
That's good. So, are we ready to go? You guys ready? Done? Your table's ready? So again, I ask you to please say your name, and if everybody here would listen up, because I'm sure we all put a lot of work into this tonight, and it'd be, very curious how everybody did, so I'm sure most of you are as well. So, you're gonna have to talk right into it.
And introduce yourselves, please.
Wiley Benedict. Let's see, our agreements are that 3.3, 4.1, and 5.2 should be managed as not suitable for livestock grazing. And that the area 4.1, the current level of motorized access will be maintained or increased.
We do have one caveat with that. The last two words, we're having a little bit, we had them in there, and now we're having a little bit of discussion. Everybody agrees that it'll be at least maintained, but whether we increase or not, that's still, so that's a close one.
Okay.
That's
it?
That's all we.
That's good.
That's all we got.
No, that's great. And for the table facilitators, I might suggest that you put your name on the piece of paper, so if we're trying to type these up, we know who to go back to try to interpret your handwriting.
I can sign that.
So, thank you.
Maggie's
You're not allowed to leave.
Who gets to speak over here? And your name is?
Michael Gibson, use Rock Creek quite a bit, and I also work for Montana Trout Unlimited. I hope I can do our table justice, because we did have some very good discussion. In general, in agreement on how Rock Creek is being managed and how it's been managed in the past. As far as the 1.2, the recommended wilderness, a majority of us were in favor of that. We did have a little disagreement just on, historical use and possibly having a few roads that, for emergency use, people up there recreating that in the wintertime or something. But we did talk about the roads that will remain open. On the 2.1, possibly could be a lightning rod for management. For the amount that it gains and helps Rock Creek, it could have some detriment just in politically. And so possibly instead of a wild and scenic designation or a recreation designation, maybe make that corridor a backcountry designation or some low intensity management area. On the backcountry, we were fine. The general forest, a question we had is, what is the most appropriate management area when surrounding area is backcountry or wilderness? Such as in the Babcock, Williams Gulch, and Ranch Creek area. Moving on to the 4.1 area, looking at the Sapphire Crest Trail. Like to see that non-motorized. Obviously, that needs to be coordinated with the Bitterroot, and offer possibly a loop motorized route in the Sapphires. A concern was that butting up against recommended wilderness, and possibly in the desired condition adding a restoration emphasis in areas that are fairly eroded already and fairly logged. Again, you know, most people like Rock Creek the way it is. We discussed creel surveys done by FWP, in which most anglers and most people using that area were pretty satisfied with how it was being managed. Water, wildlife, fish values on adjacent forests need to be coordinated, especially with the Beaverhead Deer Lodge National Forest, because that has a significant portion of the Rock Creek drainage and has a large effect on what happens to the creek as a whole, or that area as a whole, the watershed. And that's about it.
Great. Thank you. And you guys?
Elected me.
Who are you?
I'm Andy Kula, the resource staff person on the Ranger District.
You guys all here, Andy?
Yeah. We had some real good discussion on recommended wilderness. We had agreement, except one person in our group would like to see a handicap trail into the recommended wilderness. And we had one person who commented that motorized use in recommended wilderness should be allowed by exception, just like we have motorized use in 2.2 that way. In wild and scenic rivers, we had agreement, but we had some comments to clarify in the desired future condition the width of the management area, because it doesn't say for this specific one what that width is, and we need to beef that up. We also had to clarify the management area description on motorized use, because right now in the management area description it says it's not suitable for motorized use, and some of the corridor includes Rock Creek Road. In the existing condition map, there's an error in the legend. It says designated wild and scenic rivers, and Rock Creek is not designated. In the backcountry areas, we had agreement. But there's emphasis on including the exceptions that are listed in the desired future condition, meaning roads that are open and existing now, and that was the 3 roads that were named. Welcome Mountain, 17771, and
The other one.
Brewster Creek. It's blank. In General Forest 3.3, we had agreement, but the group wanted to clarify that timber harvest is appropriate in this MA, and it is, but it wasn't real clear in the MA description. In 4.1 General Forest, we had agreement with the comments that in the 4.1 General, that some of the closed roads in the northwest section of 4.1, you remember there's 3 basic sections there, could be open to ATV routes. But ATV routes where you maintain a gate that excludes trucks, but you have gates that only allow less than 50-inch vehicles in. So that's a little different suggestion than what we've heard in the past. And then also mentioned to emphasize the watershed values in this MA in the desired condition. And the group felt that because it's 4.1, but it's still in Rock Creek, that in the desired future condition, we should emphasize the watershed is a primary management consideration. It's something we want to protect in this area. In 5.2, residential and forest intermix, we had an agreement, but again, the group wanted to clarify that timber harvest is appropriate in this MA, even though it's not suitable.
Good job.
Yeah.
You guys, you want this?
Yes.
I'm Bert Lumber, and I've enjoyed fishing in Rock Creek and driving through the area. I've done very little hiking in there, but I've enjoyed it mainly from a boat or from a vehicle. So at any rate, we generally agree with the recommendations for Rock Creek, particularly with the wilderness recommendations for Quig and Stony. When we came to Wild and Scenic River, we generally agreed with the Wild and Scenic proposal. There was some question about the width of the corridor and what exactly the scenic designation added, so we weren't really totally clear on that. We understood that it would prevent a dam, but we weren't sure whether it would affect much else. In the backcountry areas, we generally agreed with the recommendations there. We didn't have discussion about the specific allowed or not allowed in the backcountry as we had in some earlier sessions, but at any rate, there was general agreement on the lines on the map. When we came to the general forest mixed uses, low intensity, that little area appeared to be fine. And where we had a fair amount of discussion was on the area of 4.1 that lies generally to the south and west of the Welcome Creek Wilderness, I guess. And it seemed to us that maybe management intensity had been reduced there apparently from past plans, but there was some question as to whether management intensity could be reduced even further to 3.3, given the character of the land and the adjoining lands. And several people discussed the possibility of a field trip and to ground truth what the country was like and how it connected to the other pieces that were designated rather differently. When we went into the residential and forest intermix, 5.2, we really, of course, don't know much about what that really means, but it did look like areas along the road where houses were, which is what it was supposed to be, and that seemed to make sense. We ran out of things to argue about, so we moved over to the greater Missoula area. And we basically agreed with the 2.1 Wild and Scenic River designations, although there were some questions about the status of the upper ends of Gold and Porcupine Creeks in the wilderness and why they hadn't received some form of recommendation for the designation. The backcountry areas, there was agreement, but concern expressed by one member in particular about the Wishart Bridge area and whether that's really being managed in a backcountry fashion now, or whether some changes could take place there that maybe would require land trades and other matters. On the special interest areas, that appears to be the Rattlesnake National Recreation Area. We didn't have any concerns about that. And then we moved to research natural areas, and we didn't quite understand what those three little areas were, but we're about to beg Andy for some help. So that's as far as we got.
Great. So I'm curious, Bert, you guys talked about getting together for a field trip to sort of set any days to do that. I think it's a good idea.
Well, I guess the question is, was that an area that other people also questioned?
Yeah. I would suggest, again, these maps are all available on the internet. It'd be nice if we all had a big map that we could take home with us, cost $1 million. But if we sort of have an outline of where we will be going for the next times. You could look at the map. We know that next time we're going to look at Lolo Peak, and that'll be a fairly narrow focused discussion. But the time after that, we'd like to finish up the greater Missoula area. So if you've got some things in mind, just looking at that map tonight, you might consider just take a day, Saturday, nice day out in the woods, go check something out. If you've got the time to do that.
Well, I guess, it wouldn't seem impossible to me that there could be something organized to go to the 4.1 area that did seem to be the subject of some discussion, and perhaps something could be organized, maybe wait till after the Lolo Peak meeting, but maybe a Saturday in there.
You bet.
So if I guess I would certainly try to flex my schedule to make that happen. And I had the opportunity to go with someone that knew something. It's one thing to go up there alone, it's another thing to go up there with several people with different ideas and with someone who has some background on the
Yeah,
area.
that's a great idea.
How many people think you might want to go along if you're organized?
Well, would it be motorized or not motorized?
We're skiing.
My name's Ronnie Morris. Can you guys all hear Ronnie?
Yes.
And 1.2, we were in agreement with that. 2.1, agreement aggressively seek opportunities to work with Beaverhead Deer Lodge for designation of the entire river. 2.2, agreements, no additional new roads or motorized routes, close and restore roads other than the 3 named in the description. 3.3, agreement. And then we have Ranch Creek map here.
Yeah, there's a little wonder if that was.
Was it an error?
There's a piece on the map that goes up Ranch Creek. We're wondering, is that supposed to be 3.3 or is that supposed to be white?
3.3 because there's a road there.
Okay.
The 3.3 little.
So it just managed, yeah.
It
along
goes
that-
into
along
some
that river.
private residence.
Yeah.
Right.
Across the national forest goes in private. So that is an intentional cherry stamp because it's an exception to the surrounding flows.
And the same is for Williams Gulch as well. I
Yeah.
believe.
4.1, we were also, as that table, the south of the Welcome Creek change, we have it to 2.2. Desired condition is to manage towards attaining a 2.2 or a 1.2. And then the Gilbert Schwartz to 3 Mile, manage for recreational opportunities, motorized use on existing roads and trails, and no new roads. 5.1, in agreement. 5.2, okay with 5.2, but we would like some considerations for wildlife corridors east of Rock Creek and looking for opportunities for forest restoration that would enhance wildlife corridors. If, I guess we didn't.
Yeah,
We'll leave that to the
team to figure out what that means.
Yeah. And road discussions in general area are fine, no additional.
Thank you. So those were, I heard several similarities in the room. I'm not sure, I think we'll probably try to lump those all together, and that's what we'll post as our notes tonight. We'll put them in the red box, here's what we heard for, each of the management area descriptions. One more? You guys want to go again? Did you get those 3 words figured out? 2 words. Okay, we're down to 2 words. So we talked about meeting, till 9:30, possibly 10 if we needed to. We're running about 9:15 right now. I think that's pretty good.
Great.
We're stepping things up a little bit. Next time we'll do Lolo Peak. What we have planned for Lolo Peak, Maggie will explain part of that. I already mentioned we'll have a focused area. It won't be the entire Lolo Creek geographic area.
I don't care, I don't think I really need it, but, how did this format work for folks tonight? Was it okay, we tried to kind of use the form to help focus the areas of agreement, which is what we're after in this collaborative process, and we think that this may be the format that might work best for the Lolo Peak meeting as well. We'll have a lot more folks here. But at this particular point, we're thinking that a majority of the time that we have at the next meeting will be spent in a similar fashion, and we'll have folks report out by table as to what some of the agreements are. So, not seeing any huge disagreements, Steve?
Because it's going to be of some interest to a lot of the people here, it seems like there's a lot of technical background issues that one would need to be informed about. That wouldn't necessarily come out of the discussions at the table.
True.
So is there any kind of, is there a possibility of having some technical briefing about different conditions and characteristics up there so that people start from the same baseline?
Yes, there is a possibility, and in my mind, although we haven't gelled this all completely, I'm thinking that if we have a 3-hour meeting, perhaps the first half hour, 45 minutes might be just what you're talking about. It might be enough kind of clarification time. The Forest Service, both myself and Dan Ritter, who's the Stevensville District Ranger, will be there, and we would kind of give a quick overview of where we are in terms of the forest planning process, and then I'm assuming it would be good to hear from either side of the issue. And then people get a general context and perhaps ask some questions and answers, and then we get to the table discussions. So over the next couple of weeks, if there are comments like this, because we're still trying to figure out how we can best do this, because keep in mind our goal is to leave the meeting on the 21st with a sense of how we feel in terms of allocation and suitability and appropriateness for that particular piece of country. And we will have maps available that'll be blown up, that'll just cover that Lolo Peak area, and both Bitter and the Lolo Forest on it.
And again, we'll be talking about management areas and suitability for future uses.
Right.
That'll be the discussion.
So we're trying to drive it to that kind of end, and we can leave with something that will be meaningful for us. Yeah.
So the next one, is there a way you can also put the map on the overhead when everybody's discussing what they're in 4.1 or 2.1? So at the table over there might have the map so people can look at it.
So you mean like a screen?
Yeah.
Oh.
Is there a way to do that so when they say that you can look at it instead of trying to crawl across the?
Great idea. We do have technology, don't we? We probably could make that happen. You know, that's a great idea, and I bet you we can make that happen. Don't you think? Chuck, you think that's?
Well, it seems like we ought to be able to.
Well, especially since it's a small area.
You're talking about a map that we could actually see the changes. We could draw the
Either on an
changes and see
overhead or a
what they're-
PowerPoint.
Like the old overhead projector kind of thing.
Yeah. And the one thing I did ask the folks that are with the Bitter Resort is to bring their maps with their proposed area on it, and then we'll have the forest maps, and so we'll have as much information as we can. And but the computer, that's a dandy idea. I knew you can't for some reason.
Just want my wife to know.
Yeah, right.
I think we will need to have a little patience at that meeting too. You guys in this room have been through like 4 of these meetings now. You're becoming fairly proficient with management areas and what they all mean and what the feel and the flavor is. I'm guessing there will be new people here. So you will all need to be the leaders next 2 weeks from now to help us explain, and at your individual tables, to explain, you know, we're going to have to take a step or two back. Here's what management area 5.2 means. So keep that in mind, that we'll all need to be teachers next time we meet together.
And the room will be bigger.
Yeah, we'll have this whole, just like we were thinking we were going to draw a crowd on the very first night, we'll have that whole big room again.
I like the idea of tables, you can work together, it's just, it'll be a little noisy, I think, because I don't know how many people are going to be here, but we're thinking the same format. But we will be trying to get the word out, you guys can all help us. It's not about getting 85 people that think one way and 25 that think another way. It's about coming together and trying to get collaboration on what is going to work in a given area. So what do we envision as small tables for what this area should be in the future? So, you know, please help us get that word out. It's kind of what it is about and what it isn't about.
Are the definitions on the website that you gave us to?
No, we're not. I just pulled that together out of our files this afternoon. We're definitely a work in progress. Probably a lot of those we've dropped because you won't find them very interesting, and some that aren't there need to be added. So it's probably going to be a while before we get that up on the website.
Did you look at it at all? Did you guys use those definitions? Because, I mean, we can post it, it's just draft, but we did that, they're not wrong, they're definitions, some of them might be boring.
That was put together pretty hastily. We need to go back through and screen it and make sure that we've said things right and so forth. So we'll do it as soon as we can, but I don't want to promise we'll have it in the next week or so. There's so many things going on.
So everybody's clear on our next meeting will be Lolo Peak, and then after that, 2 weeks later, we'll get back together and talk about the Missoula, Greater Missoula geographic area. Okay?
And then the meeting after that, we have scheduled for Lolo Creek, that geographic area.
So, everybody okay with that? No questions? Great, thank you so much for your help tonight. Really was great coming. Make sure that your notes are left at the table.